Good day, everyone. My name is Herry o Oclarit. I am from Group 6, and together with me today are my group mates, Mr. Kenneth Edward Mondigo and Mr. Odto Kyrk. So our topic for today will be about the COLREG's 1972 Rules 18 and Rule 19. So next slide, please. So first, I will discuss the course outcome. Demonstrate thorough knowledge and understanding of the content, application, and intent of the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea 1972 as amended. Specifically, to elaborate and explain briefly the content and application of Rule 18 and Rule 19 in the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea 1972, otherwise known as COLREG's 1972, as implemented.
So as for the learning outcome, to recall and grasp the rules, concept and scope of the international regulations for the prevention of collisions at sea 1972 as amended. So next slide please.
So as for the importance of the topic, these students will have a working understanding of how to apply each rule and will be able to picture circumstances in which and when the rules amended by COLREG should be used.
Rule 18, responsibilities between vessels. So I will now discuss Rule 18. Next slide, please. Rule 18, again, responsibilities between vessels, except where Rules 9, 10, and 13 otherwise require. So we have to take note of that. I will recap about Rules 9, 10, and 13 in the next slide so that you will have better understanding on the said topic. Paragraph A. A power-driven vessel underway shall keep out of the way of. Subparagraph 1. A vessel not under command or an NUC. Subparagraph 2. A vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. Subparagraph 3, a vessel engaged in fishing. Subparagraph 4, a sailing vessel. So next slide, please. So let us recall. Rule 9 is about narrow channels. Rule 10 is about the TSS or the Traffic Separation Scheme. And finally, we have Rule 13, which is about overtaking. So next slide, please. So this is a picture of a narrow channel where Rule 9 has higher priority compared to Rule 18. So in narrow channels, the rules specified in Rule 18 come after Rule 9. So next slide, please. So as well as in Rule 10 or in the traffic separation schemes as shown in our presentation. Next slide, please. Finally, we have Rule 13 or overtaking. So Rule 13 has higher priority compared to Rule 18. So in open sea, where a vessel is overtaking, Rule 13 should have higher priority compared to Rules 18. So next slide, please. So again, Rule 18. Paragraph B, a sailing vessel underway shall keep out of the way of. Subparagraph 1, a vessel not under command. Subparagraph 2, a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. And subparagraph 3, a vessel engaged in fishing. So as you can see, there is a hierarchy forming about the vessels, which vessels have the utmost priority and which vessels are the giveaway vessels. So later I will show a diagram so that you can understand better what I am talking about. So next slide, please. Rule 18, paragraph C. A vessel engaged in fishing when underway shall, so far as possible, keep out of the way of. Subparagraph 1, a vessel not under command. Subparagraph 2, a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. So next slide, please. Rule 18, paragraph D. Subparagraph 1. Any vessel other than a vessel not under command or a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid impending in the safe passage of a vessel constrained by her draft, exhibiting the light signals of Rule 28. So this is about a vessel constrained by her draft. Subparagraph 2 states that a vessel constrained by her draft shall navigate with particular caution, having full regard to her special condition. So, next slide, please. So, paragraph E of Rule 18, a seaplane on the water, in general, shall keep well clear of all vessels to avoid impeding their navigation. In circumstances, however, where risk of collision exists, she shall comply with the rules of this part. So she will act as a power-driven vessel. Paragraph F states that a wig or a wing in-ground craft, when taking off, landing, and in flight near the surface, shall keep well clear of other vessels to avoid impeding in their navigation. Subparagraph 2 of paragraph F says that a wig craft operating on the water's surface shall comply with the rules of this part as a power-driven vessel. So same as the seaplanes. So next slide, please. So this is the diagram that I was talking about, the hierarchy of vessels. So at the topmost part, we can see the prioritized vessels. For instance, we have the vessels not under command, the NUC, and the vessels restricted in their ability to maneuver. Below them are the CBD, or the vessels constrained by her draft. And then we have the fishing vessels, and then the sailing vessels, followed by the power-driven vessels, and then finally the seaplanes. So as you can see, there is a hierarchy of which vessels are to be prioritized in said situations. So they exhibit signals as well. In daytime, they show two black balls for the NUC, two black balls with a diamond in the middle for the ram, and then on the nighttime, it shows two straight red lights, and then two red lights with a white light in the middle for the ram. So for the vessel constrained by her draft, it shows a black cylinder in daytime and three red lights in nighttime. So a vessel fishing shows two triangles with the apex pointing towards each other. So for the fishing vessels, it shows a red and white light on nighttime and green and white light if it is trolling. So I will show you a pattern on how to remember this easier. So in order to familiarize yourself better with this said hierarchy, we have this key phrase. No room, Cecil, for San Pedro Santos. So it has the vessel not under command as the top priority, followed by the vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver, then followed by the vessels constrained by her draft, fishing vessels, sailing vessels, power-driven vessels, and finally, we have seaplanes. So I hope this phrase will help you remember it better and easier. So next slide, please.
So next will be Rule 19, Conduct of Vessels and Restricted Visibility. So next slide, please. So it states here in paragraph A that this rule applies to vessels not in sight of one another when navigating in or near an area of restricted visibility. The opening sentence of Rule 19 means that when we are navigating in an area of restricted visibility, which would be caused by fog or mist or heavy rain or whatever other circumstances it might be. So we cannot see other vessels with the naked eye, whereas under normal circumstances, if there wasn't an effect on visibility in that area, we would be able to see vessels with the naked eye. So in particular, the wording says vessel not in sight of one another means that Section 2 of the steering and sailing rules do not apply in restricted visibility, which is a really big change to how we conduct the bridge of our vessel or how we skipper our leisure vessel. Basically, Section 2 rules do not apply means that Rule 12, conduct between sailing vessels, doesn't apply in restricted visibility. That means there is no such thing as port tack giving way to starboard tack. No such thing as windward vessel gives way to leeward vessel also means Rule 13, overtaking does not apply in restricted visibility. Everybody is a giveaway boat. So Rule 14, head-on situations. Again, a head-on situation between two power-driven vessels, both avoiding action by turning to a restricted visibility means that any power-driven vessel coming from our starboard side, we do not give way to it. So Rule 16, action by giveaway vessel, and Rule 17, action by stand-on vessel. These don't apply in restricted visibility because everybody is a giveaway and there's no such thing as stand-on giveaway situation. And finally, Rule 18, responsibilities between vessels. This hierarchy does not apply and restrict the visibility either because everybody is a giveaway vessel. So not under command, but it doesn't have a priority over restricted and ability. So next slide, please. Paragraph B. Every vessel shall proceed at a safe speed adapted to prevailing circumstances and conditions of restricted visibility. A power-driven vessel shall have her engines ready for immediate maneuver. So the first part of this paragraph means apply Rule 6. So Rule 6 is a safe speed, and safe speed rule has several things for us to take into account. Firstly, the state of visibility in this case restricted that the density of traffic, how many other vessels are in the area of maneuverability of our own vessel. The background light should there be any if we are navigating restricted visibility in dark weather influences, the sea state, anything else that could cause us to slow down. And in this case, including the fog and the depth and draft also has to be taken into account, all under Rule 6, which Part B of Rule 19 is specifically referring us to. Further than that, for vessels fitted with operation radar, we have to take into account the characteristics of the radar equipment in use. The range that we are using is a 6-mile scale or 12-mile scale. The effect of interference on the radar of surrounding weather influences floating objects such as ice or small vessels which may not be detected by radar. All of these needs to be included as part of this rule. So the second part, a power-driven vessel shall have her engine ready for immediate maneuver, means that we should all be using our engine in particular, and I would reference sailing vessels, and we should not be sailing in areas of restricted visibility. So next slide, please. So paragraph C, every vessel shall have due regard to the prevailing circumstances and conditions of restricted visibility with complying with the rules of Section 1 of this part. So Section 1, rules of the steering sailing rules apply in all conditions of visibility, which means that Rule 5, lookout, keeping a constant lookout around the vessel applies. And Rule 6, safe speed, as we've just discussed, restrictive visibility. And Rule 7, risk of collision, we have to use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances to ascertain whether or not the risk of collision. So Rule 8, action to avoid a collision in restricted visibility still needs to be early, bold, clear maneuvering. Rule 9, narrow channels. So we still navigate on the starboard side and we still do not anchor in a narrow channel, and we should give way if we are fishing narrow channel. Sailing vessels under 20 meters should impede in a narrow channel, and all of that still applies. And Rule 10, traffic separation schemes or TSS, we have to behave accordingly when we are navigating within that area. And next slide, please.
So now we have the Rule 19, the paragraph D. A vessel which detects by radar alone the presence of another vessel shall determine if a close quarter situation is developing or risk of collision exists. If so, she shall take avoiding action in ample time, provided that when such action consists of an alteration of course, so far as possible, the following shall be avoided. So in the detection by radar alone in Rule 19, especially when we are in close quarter situation, the distance of a close quarter situation is difficult to measure in miles. It depends upon a number of following factors. First, we have the size and the maneuvering characteristic of the vessel. We have the speed of the vessel, and we have a traffic density. And lastly, the experience and judgment of the master or the officer of watch. So proper use of radar is required to obtain an early warning of risk of collision. Radar plotting or equivalent systematic observation, just like the ARPA, must be carried out. So now we have the subparagraph 1. An alteration of course to port for a vessel forward of the beam other than for a vessel being overtaken. So it is thus mandatory to alter our course to starboard side in meeting or crossing situations between the vessels not in sight of one another. And we have the subparagraph 2. An alteration of course towards a vessel, a beam, or above the beam. So an alteration of course in either direction is permitted when a vessel approaches from astern. In this particular overtaking situation, both ships may alter course in both directions. In restricted visibility, Rule 13 overtaking does not apply if risk of collision exists. Both vessels must take avoiding action to Rule 19. So in restricted visibility, Rule 13 overtaking does not apply. Alteration of course should be at least 30 degrees, preferably 60 degrees to 90 degrees, to be readily apparent to another ship observing. So now we have the Rule 19, the paragraph E, where it has been determined that a risk of collision does not exist. Every vessel which hears apparently forward of her beam the flag signal of another vessel, or which cannot avoid a close quarter situation with another vessel forward of her beam, shall reduce her speed to the minimum at which she can be kept on her course. She shall, if necessary, take all her way off, in any event navigate with extreme caution until danger of collision is over. So when a fog signal is heard forward of the beam and risk of collision exists, Rule 19, paragraph E applies to every vessel. Even if the vessel has detected the other one on her radar, the fact that a fog signal is heard, that a risk of collision exists. That means that the distance between the two vessels is under the close quarter situations, limited in his restricted visibility. And also that the vessel has not taken avoiding action in due time. Vessels are then required by Rule 19, paragraph E to reduce their speed to the bare steerage way. Never wait too long to take avoiding action. Do not wait until the ship is so close that you can hear a fog signal. Always keep in mind that some ships may not give the prescribed fog signals, especially when they only rely on their radar. So here is the references we use in gathering the informations needed for this output. So with the rules of the road, specifically the Rule 18, the responsibilities between vessels, and the Rule 19, the conduct of vessels in restricted visibility, we can easily identify the best thing to do when we encounter such situations. We as a seafarer must be composed with confidence in what we have learned in the rules of the road, or basically known as the COLREGs, and at the same time be ready for unexpected situations. I think that will be all for the Group 6, and thank you for listening.